You will never believe how a little dog changed the life of an ordinary man and made a difference for dozens of animals in distress. At the end of the video, you will discover how a simple choice led to an ending that no one could have ever imagined. Stay with us, because this story will touch you deeply. Have you ever wondered if a small gesture can really change someone's life? This is the story of a man who chose to follow his instincts. The bus was about to depart when a desperate bark pierced the morning air. The passengers turned in surprise to see a small Jack Russell Terrier frantically jumping next to the vehicle, its eyes filled with an almost human urgency. The driver, Dave Wilson, hesitated, his finger hovering above the button to close the doors. The dog's behavior made his heart clench. This was no simple request for a ride. Little did he know that everyone was in a panic, and that a touching truth about the bond between humans and their loyal companions would soon be revealed. Dave's worn hand trembled slightly as he withdrew it from the door control. In his 15 years as a bus driver in downtown Liverpool, he had seen his fair share of strange events, but this was something entirely new. The dog barked again, this time more insistently, its small body quivering with what Dave could only describe as desperation. With his often impatient Scouse accent, Dave said. Dave ignored it, his gaze fixed on the dog whose collar jingled with each frantic jump, the tags catching the weak English sun that filtered through the cloudy sky. The terrier ran a few steps away from the bus, then turned back to Dave, clearly wanting him to follow. "I can't leave the bus, little friend," Dave called out, glancing at his watch. He was already late, and the feeling he couldn't shake off grew louder as the murmur of confusion among the passengers became stronger, some craning their necks to see what was happening, while others huffed impatiently, eager to reach their destinations. "What the hell is going on up there?" asked an elderly woman in a floral scarf, her voice cutting through the noise. Dave took a deep breath, making a decision that could cost him his job. "Men and women, I need to check something." Despite protests, Dave grabbed the first aid kit from under his seat and got off the bus. Would you have had the courage to abandon your job, risking your position, to help an animal? Write it in the comments and let us know what you would have done. The dog immediately ran toward him, wrapping itself around his legs once before darting down the street. His mind raced as he chased after the dog, abandoning his bus. But the dog's behavior spoke of an intelligence and determination that couldn't be ignored. The terrier led him about 50 meters down the road to a small alley between some chip boxes. In the alley lay a crumpled figure.
Hi there. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to subscribe to our channel. It's completely free and takes just a second, but it means the world to us. Your support is the reason we can keep bringing you incredible stories every day.
"Oh my God," Dave murmured, his heartbeat quickening as he approached. He saw an elderly woman, probably in her 70s, lying face down on the cold concrete. Her silver hair was neatly tied up, a stark contrast to the bright blue and purple of her floral dress. The dog whined gently, nudging the woman's hand with its nose. Stop for a moment and think. How many times have we ignored the signals from those in need? This is one of those situations where every second counts. Dave knelt beside her, gently placing 2 fingers on her neck to check for a pulse. To his relief, he felt it on her side. "Can you hear me?" he asked. The woman's eyes opened slowly, disoriented and confused. "Biscuit," she murmured weakly. The dog, Biscuit, Dave surmised, let out a soft whine in response, wagging its tail slightly. Dave admired the loyalty and readiness of the animal. Jack Russell Terriers were known for their intelligence and strong bonds with their owners, but this was extraordinary. "It's okay, ma'am," Dave reassured her, even as his heart raced. "Help is on the way." Today's magic word is unconditional. Write it in the comments to participate in our contest and win exclusive prizes every week. Dave noticed a medical alert bracelet on the elderly woman's wrist, squinting to read the inscription, which said, "Margaret Thompson, diabetes." Suddenly, the pieces started falling into place. Dave had attended a first aid refresher course just last month, and they had covered diabetic emergencies. Could this be what he was dealing with now? "Ms. Thompson," Dave said clearly as he leaned in, "how often are we willing to stop for a stranger? Leave a like if you still believe in human kindness." Margaret's eyes seemed to clear slightly at the question, and she nodded weakly. Dave turned to the crowd. "Does anyone have candy or a sugary drink?" As people rummaged through bags and pockets, Dave admired Biscuit, who remained watchful at Margaret's side. This intelligent animal not only recognized that its owner was in trouble, but had also sought help from a bus. Dave nodded appreciatively, took the drink, opened the can, and gently raised Margaret's head, helping her take small sips while they waited for the ambulance. The tension in the alley was palpable as passers-by whispered and pointed, some offering help, while others merely stared. Biscuit never took its eyes off Margaret, and Dave wondered how long she and her dog had been together. Dave turned to look at his abandoned bus, knowing he would have to explain a lot to his supervisor, and likely to an angry bus full of passengers. But looking at Margaret's frail figure and the little devoted dog by her side, he knew he had made the right choice. The paramedics arrived in a whirlwind of activity. Dave found himself holding Biscuit, who was now sweetly sleeping in his arms. "Don't worry, little one," Dave whispered, scratching behind the dog's ears. "Your mom is in good hands now, thanks to you." As the paramedics prepared to load Margaret onto a stretcher, one of them looked at Dave with a serious expression. Seeking help may have saved her life. As Margaret was gently secured on a stretcher, her eyes found Biscuit, and a weak smile crossed her face. "My hero," she whispered, reaching out a trembling hand to her faithful companion. Dave felt a lump rise in his throat as he watched the scene unfold. He had always considered himself a cat person, but this experience was making him reassess the depth of the bond between Margaret and Biscuit. As the ambulance doors closed and the vehicle drove away, its sirens piercing the morning air, Dave stood in the alley with Biscuit in his arms, surrounded by the dispersing crowd, exhilarated and profoundly moved by what had just transpired. How would this unexpected turn of events affect the lives of everyone involved, and what would become of Biscuit while Margaret was in the hospital? Dave knew that his view of the world and the extraordinary capabilities of our four-legged friends would never be the same again, as the wail of the ambulance faded into the distance, leaving an unsettling silence. Dave stood in the alley with Biscuit, the gravity of the situation sinking in. The little dog whined softly, his eyes fixed on the spot where the ambulance had been. Whether reassuring the dog or himself, Dave cleared his throat. Just then, a voice called out behind him, bringing Dave back to reality. He turned to find a police officer at the entrance of the alley, notebook in hand. "Excuse me, sir," the officer said, his heavy Liverpool accent pronounced. "I need to ask you a few questions about what happened here." Dave nodded, suddenly aware of the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. As he recounted the events to the officer, he couldn't help but marvel at the series of coincidences. "If Biscuit hadn't been so persistent, and you say the dog led you here?" the policeman inquired, raising an eyebrow skeptically. "Exactly," Dave replied, feeling a wave of defensiveness in favor of Biscuit. "I know it sounds crazy, but it's the truth. That little one knew exactly what it was doing. The officer jotted something down in his notebook and then looked at Biscuit. Well, I've heard stranger things. Jack Russells are known for their intelligence. They were originally bred for fox hunting. They're tenacious little ones with a strong prey drive. Dave blinked in surprise. He hadn't known that, but it certainly explained Biscuit's determination. He had just been following his instincts. Then the constable shrugged. Maybe, or maybe he's just a really good boy who loves his owner. By the way, we'll need to find someone to look after him while Mrs. Thompson is in the hospital. Dave felt a pang of concern. Does she have any family? He asked. We're investigating, replied the officer. In the meantime, we'll have to take him to a shelter. No, Dave interrupted, surprising himself with the vehemence in his voice. I mean, I could take care of him until Mrs. Thompson is back on her feet. The words slipped out before he could think twice about it. Dave, who had never owned a pet and could barely keep his houseplants alive, was offering to care for a new dog. Are you sure about this, sir? It's a big responsibility. Dave looked at Biscuit, who was gazing at him with soulful brown eyes. At that moment, he felt a connection with the little dog that he couldn't explain. I'm sure, he said firmly, as the officer took note of Dave's details. A commotion at the end of the alley caught their attention. A group of angry passengers from the abandoned bus had arrived on the scene, led by a man in a suit. Hey, he shouted, pointing an accusing finger at Dave. The irresponsible driver who left us stranded. Dave's heart sank amidst the drama of the rescue. He had forgotten about his job. He could already imagine the stern reprimand from his supervisor, the note in his file, and possibly even termination. How would he explain this? But as the furious passengers approached, Biscuit sensed the threat to his new friend and let out to everyone's surprise. A young woman stepped forward from the crowd. Dave recognized her as the one who had called the ambulance earlier. Wait, she said, her voice cutting through the tense air. You don't understand. This man is a hero. As she explained what had happened, Dave watched the passenger's anger slowly transform into a mix of surprise and reluctant admiration. The businessman who had led the charge looked particularly disheartened. I thought you'd abandoned your post for no reason, he said, now forlorn. Dave shook his head. I know how it must have seemed. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Truly, I just couldn't ignore a cry for help, even if it came from an unexpected source. He glanced at Biscuit, who had calmed down and was now sitting quietly at his feet. The police officer, who had been watching the exchange with interest, cleared his throat just then. I think for now, we're all set here. Mr. Wilson. As the officer left, Dave found himself alone again with Biscuit. The morning felt surreal, like a vivid dream, but the warm weight of the dog resting against his leg was undeniably real. Well, buddy, Dave said, looking down at his new companion. It looks like it's just the two of us for a while. What do you say we head home? Biscuit's tail wagged in response, and Dave couldn't help but smile as they walked out of the alley together. He realized his life had irrevocably changed. The bus depot was just a few blocks away, and Dave decided to face the situation sooner rather than later as they approached the imposing brick building. He felt Biscuit tense next to him. It's okay, Dave murmured, more to himself than to the dog. We're in this together. Inside the depot, drivers came and went, the air smelling of diesel as workers changed shifts. Dave made his way to the supervisor's office, his heart pounding. With Biscuit's reassuring presence by his side, Dave entered to find his supervisor, Mr. Granger, staring grimly at a computer screen. The older man looked up, his frown deepening at the sight of Dave Wilson. I have half the city complaining about a bus left abandoned on Girard Street. You'd better have a rock-solid explanation." Dave took a deep breath and started recounting the events of the morning. As he spoke, he watched Mr. Granger's expression shift from anger to increasing amazement. "So let me get this straight," Mr. Granger said when Dave finished. "You left your bus to follow a dog that led you to a woman in medical distress." Put that way, it sounded rather incredible. Dave nodded, bracing for the inevitable scolding, but instead, Mr. Granger let out a low whistle. "I can't believe it, Wilson. In all my years on the job, I've never heard a story quite like that. Liverpool's finest, more than mere drivers. I think we might have found our man." Dave blinked in surprise at this unexpected turn. "Sir." Mr. Granger smiled, a rare sight that transformed his wrinkled face. "What you did today, Wilson, is the kind of thing that restores people's faith in humanity. It's exactly the image we want to project." As the implications of this sank in, Dave felt a wave of relief wash over him. Not only had he received praise. Mr. Granger's eyes fell on Biscuit, who had been sitting patiently beside Dave. "And who is this little hero?" "This is Biscuit, sir," Dave replied, bending down to scratch behind the dog's ears. "Well, I agreed to take care of him while his owner recovers." Mr. Granger nodded approvingly. "Good man. Now why don't you take the rest of the day off? Get this little one settled, and we'll sort out the details of the campaign tomorrow." As Dave left, he felt a renewed spring in his step. He looked at Biscuit, who was gazing at him with what Dave could have sworn was a look of pride. "Well, buddy," Dave said with a smile, "it looks like we might both become local celebrities soon. How about we head home and celebrate with some good dog food for you?" Biscuit's enthusiastic bark echoed in the depot, eliciting smiles from other drivers as they stepped out into Liverpool. Dave hardly had a moment to catch his breath between taking care of Biscuit, visiting Margaret in the hospital, and preparing for the transport company's new campaign. But despite the chaos, he felt happier than he had in years. Biscuit had settled into Dave's small apartment with surprising ease, quickly claiming the worn armchair by the window as his favorite spot. On Friday afternoon, Dave received a call from the hospital saying Margaret was recovering. Sure, here's the translation of the provided Italian text into English. She was fine and would be discharged the next day. He was relieved, but also saddened at the thought of saying goodbye to Biscuit. "Well, buddy," Dave said to the dog. Biscuit's tail wagged at the sound of Dave's voice, but there was something in the dog's eyes that made Dave wonder if he understood more than he let on. The next morning, Dave and Biscuit went to the hospital. When they entered Margaret's room, the elderly woman's face lit up with joy. "Biscuit!" she exclaimed, her voice louder than Dave had expected. The small dog jumped onto the bed, wagging his tail furiously. It's incredible how animals seem to sense our pain and our love, isn't it? Do you think animals have some sort of sixth sense? Let's discuss it in the comments. Dave watched the reunion with a smile, but he couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness in his chest. In the past week, he had become more attached to the little terrier than he wanted to admit. As Biscuit settled onto Margaret's lap, she turned to Dave and said, "You must be the kind bus driver I've heard so much about." He complained, feeling uncomfortable with the compliments. Margaret shook her head. "No one would follow a strange dog all the way out there. You really are special." As they chatted, Dave learned more about Margaret's life. She had been a teacher before retiring, and Biscuit had been her constant companion for the past 8 years. "He's a rescue dog, you know," she said, scratching behind Biscuit's ears. "The shelter said he was abandoned, poor puppy. but for me it was just a blessing. Would you mind if I came to visit Biscuit sometimes? I've grown quite fond of him, Ms. Thompson asked hesitantly. Margaret's face softened. Of course you can come to see him, in fact. She paused, seeming to reflect on something. I volunteer at the local animal shelter a few days a week. Why don't you join us? They are always looking for more help, and I have a feeling you would be a natural. Dave was hesitant at the idea, but now looking at Biscuit's expectant face, he found himself nodding. I would like that, he said, surprised at how much he truly meant it. As they left the hospital, Biscuit trotted happily between them, and Dave felt a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of a series of events that would test his newfound determination and change his life in ways he could never have imagined. The following week, with nerves fluttering in his stomach, Margaret and Biscuit had taken his side, offering silent support. Ready? Margaret asked with a conspiratorial smile on her face. Dave took a deep breath and nodded as they entered the shelter. The cacophony of barking, meowing, and squeaking overwhelmed them, and the smell of animals and disinfectant filled the air. The woman's eyes widened in recognition. Oh, you're the bus driver everyone is talking about. She reached out her hand. I'm Zoe, the volunteer coordinator. We are excited to have you with us. As Zoe guided them through the shelter, explaining the various tasks and introducing them to the animals, Dave felt his initial excitement growing. There was something deeply satisfying about helping these creatures, each with their own story of hardship and hope. Weeks passed, and Dave adapted to the new routine. His mornings were spent driving his usual routes, now with a renewed appreciation for life's unexpected turns. His afternoons and weekends were divided between visits to Margaret and Biscuit and his volunteer work at the shelter. It was during one of those volunteer shifts that Dave's experience took a dramatic turn. While cleaning the dog kennels, Zoe burst in with a pale face. Dave, we need your help, she said urgently. There's been a big accident on the M62. A truck carrying dogs from a puppy mill has overturned. We're taking in as many as we can, but we are short on space and staff. Dave murmured, cradling a trembling Chihuahua puppy in his arms. Zoe shook her head sadly. Puppy mills are all about profit, not the well-being of the animals, but that's why places like this exist, to give these dogs a second chance. As Dave looked around at the frightened and confused faces of the rescued puppies, something stirred within him. He had always considered himself an ordinary man, content with his job as a bus driver, determined to do more. Zoe, he said firmly, I want to do more than just volunteer. How can I help shut down places like this? This was the moment when Dave made a decision that would change not only his life, but the lives of hundreds of animals. What would you have done in his place? Zoe's eyes lit up. Well, to be honest, we were planning a campaign to raise awareness about puppy mills and promote adoption. With your new status as a local celebrity, you could be a powerful voice for these animals. Dave nodded, feeling excited and nervous. After all, he was just a bus driver. What did he know about? Share this video with 3 people who love animals and want to make a difference. Together, we can raise awareness against puppy mills. Dave had to try, but what he didn't realize was that his decision to speak out would have far-reaching consequences as the campaign gained momentum and attracted attention not only from local media, but also from some less reputable figures in the puppy mill industry. One evening, as Dave was closing the shelter after his shift, he saw a luxurious black car parked across the street. A chill ran down his spine. We need to talk about this campaign of yours. It's causing some trouble for certain business interests. Dave felt his heart race, but held his ground. I'm not interested in talking to anyone who puts profit over the welfare of animals," he said, surprised by the firmness in his voice. The man's eyes narrowed. "I would rethink that if I were you, Mr. Wilson. Things could get uncomfortable for you and your little animal-loving friends." Dave realized that his simple act of kindness in following Biscuit that fateful morning had set off events far beyond anything he could have imagined. His mind raced with thoughts of whether to withdraw and go to the police, as fear and uncertainty battled within him. Dave found himself yearning for the constant presence of Biscuit, the little dog who had shown so much courage. With trembling hands, Dave pulled out his phone and dialed Margaret's number. As it rang, he resolved not to be intimidated and to face the situation head-on for the sake of the animals who could not speak for themselves. Little did Dave know that his determination would be tested in ways he could never have predicted, and that the true impact of Biscuit on his life was just beginning to unfold. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity, and his face appeared on posters all across Liverpool, his story shared in local news and on social media. From bus driver to animal advocate, the man who followed a dog and found his calling, the headlines read. But as the campaign gained traction, the backlash increased. Dave received threatening anonymous calls, and one morning, he woke up to find his bus vandalized with warnings sprayed in paint. The police were understanding, but he found comfort in visiting Margaret and Biscuit. The little Jack Russell seemed to sense Dave's distress and often curled up on his lap, offering silent comfort. "You're doing the right thing, love," Margaret said, her eyes filled with pride and concern. "But be careful. These people are not to be taken lightly." Dave nodded absently, scratching behind Biscuit's ears. "I know, Margaret, but I can't back down now. Not when we are making a difference." It was a crisp autumn day. As Dave was walking home after a shift at the shelter, his mind preoccupied with the upcoming charity event they were organizing. He didn't notice the van following him until it was too late. Two men jumped out and grabbed Dave, forcing him into the vehicle as they sped away. Dave's heart raced. This was it. His worst fears had come true. They drove for what felt like an eternity, arriving at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Inside, the walls were cages upon cages of puppies, whose pitiful whines filled the air. A man emerged from the shadows, the same one who had threatened Dave from the car weeks before. "Mr. Wilson," he said coldly, "I had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but you have left us no choice. You will help take these dogs out of the country tonight, and then you will publicly retract your statements about puppy mills. Or else." He left the threat hanging in the air. Dave overwhelmed. How could he get out of this situation? As he frantically searched for a solution, a familiar sound sliced through the air, a sharp and insistent barking. Everyone froze. It couldn't be. Suddenly, the warehouse door burst open, and a team of police officers, led by Biscuit, wriggling on a leash, held by a very worried Margaret, surged inside. "Dave!" she exclaimed, a look of relief spreading across her face as the police quickly overpowered the puppy mill operators. Dave learned about their usual visit. She had been worried, and Biscuit, sensing that something was wrong, had become agitated, pulling on the leash and barking at the door. "It was just like that morning on the bus," Margaret explained, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I knew he was trying to tell me something, so I called the police, and we followed him. Somehow, he led us straight to you." Dave knelt, wrapping his arms around the little dog, who had saved him once again. "You're brilliant." Days later, Biscuit's second heroic act spread like wildfire, turning the raid on the puppy mill into national news and making Dave and Biscuit the faces of the anti-puppy mill movement. Donations poured into the Liverpool Animal Welfare Society, allowing them to expand their facilities and rescue efforts. Dave found himself at a crossroads. The transport company, thrilled with the positive publicity, offered him a promotion to management, surrounded by the animals he had learned to love. He knew his path lay elsewhere. "I'm sorry," he said to his surprised supervisor, "but I think I've found my true calling." And so David Wilson, a bus driver, became the full-time outreach coordinator for the Liverpool Animal Welfare Society, spending his days in rescue operations, educational programs, and occasional media appearances with his four-legged partner, Biscuit. Isn't it amazing how life takes us on unexpected paths? If you believe that every gesture counts, subscribe to our channel and join this community of people who want to make a difference. At the opening of the city's state-of-the-art new animal shelter, Margaret sat in the front row with Biscuit in her lap, both beaming with pride. "A year ago," Dave began, his voice carrying across the crowd, "I was just a bus driver. I thought I knew where my life was headed. But then this little dog," he gestured to Biscuit, who stood attentively, "showed me that sometimes the most extraordinary journeys begin with the smallest actions." Volunteers rescued animals into the arms of their new families, community members joining their cause. Biscuit taught me that heroism isn't about grand gestures, but being willing to listen, to follow your heart, even if it takes you off the planned path. Each of us has the power to make a difference, to be a hero to those in need. Would you have imagined all this because he chose to listen to a dog's desperate cry for help? Later that evening, as Dave sat in Margaret's cozy living room, Biscuit curled up between them. He marveled at the journey that had brought him here, from a solitary existence to being part of this unconventional yet loving family, from a spectator to an active agent of change in his community. "A penny for your thoughts?" Margaret asked with a knowing smile. Dave chuckled, thinking about how much had changed. "A year ago, if someone had told me I'd be where I am now, I would have thought they were completely crazy." Margaret laughed, the warm, comforting sound. "Life has a funny way of surprising us, doesn't it? There's an old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I think Biscuit here was your teacher, in a sense. He saw something in you." Waving a hand distractedly, she said, "We all helped each other." Dave's heart resonated with the word family. They had become a wonderful and unlikely family, brought together by extraordinary circumstances. As Margaret shared stories of her days as a teacher, Dave felt a sense of peace enveloping him. He thought about that morning on the bus and the decision made in an instant that had changed everything. Staying in his safe and predictable life was much like driving a bus. You could start with a preset route in mind, but you never knew when you would need to take an unexpected detour. The key was to remain open to possibilities and be willing to deviate from the path when something or someone important demanded your attention. As Biscuit wagged his tail, Dave thought he saw a glimmer of understanding in those expressive eyes. A silent recognition passed between them, two unlikely heroes who had found in each other the courage to make a difference. As Dave stepped out into the cool Liverpool night, he felt excited about what the future might hold. There would be challenges ahead, undoubtedly more animals to save, more battles to fight. But with Biscuit by his side and the support to tackle whatever came their way. After all, sometimes the most incredible journeys begin with a simple act of kindness and the bark of a little brave dog. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe and check out our next story. Did you like this story? In the next video, we'll talk about a cat that saved the life of an entire family. You wouldn't want to miss it, right? Subscribe now and turn on the bell to stay updated. Remember, every time you comment, share, or subscribe, you're helping to spread the word about stories like this. Every gesture counts, just like the gesture of Dave and Biscuit. For every comment left under this video, a dog in Liverpool shelters will receive more visibility thanks to our campaign. Don't underestimate the power of a comment. Together we can truly make a difference. There's the next incredible story waiting for you. Don't let it pass you by. Feel free to ask if you need anything else.